Have you ever felt that life is a silent struggle? A battle you fight every day without anyone else seeing it? Do you feel the weight of incessant effort, as if you were rowing with all your strength in a vast ocean, only to find that the shore never gets closer? You cling to control, believing that if you plan every move and anticipate every obstacle, you will finally find solid ground, a moment of peace. Yet life, with its untamable nature, always finds a way to overflow your plans, presenting you with currents you didn't expect and taking you to places you didn't choose. And in that constant struggle, in that attempt to dominate the indomitable, lies the root of a profound exhaustion that goes beyond the body and permeates the soul. But what if I told you that all this effort has been misplaced? What if I revealed to you that the problem is not your lack of strength, but that you have been fighting against the most powerful force you possess? Inside you at this very instant a river flows, an inner river of power, wisdom, and immense peace that perhaps you have forgotten. It was born with you, pure and crystalline, with a course destined to lead you toward fulfillment. Its current is your intuition, its strength is your purpose, and its calm is your natural state. However, as we grew up, the world taught us to distrust our river. It told us it was dangerous, unpredictable, and that we needed to contain it. And so we began to build dams. Dams of fear so as not to feel too much. Channels of rigid expectations to force life to go where we thought it should. Walls of pride so as not to show vulnerability. We have spent years reinforcing these constructions, believing they protected us, when in reality, they have only managed to stagnate our own vital force, turning our mighty river into a swamp of doubt and fatigue. This audiobook will not teach you to build stronger dams. It won't give you new tools to control the current. Quite the opposite. It is an invitation to demolish, stone by stone, everything that prevents you from flowing. It is a journey back to the shore of your own being, a map to remember how to navigate instead of resist. Throughout 10 chapters, 10 stops in the heart of your inner landscape, you won't learn rules, but you will remember rhythms. You will learn to accept the birth of your river, to hear the echo of your inner truth, to see challenges as stones that the current polishes into beauty, and to find profound wisdom in the peaceful backwaters. It is not a manual, it is an experience of reconnection. It is the permission you may have never given yourself to let go of the oars, trust the water, and allow your inner river to carry you home. The struggle has been long and exhausting. But today, in this moment, you can make a different decision. You can choose to leave the shore of resistance and dive into the waters of trust. The question is, are you ready to immerse yourself? Chapter 1. The Birth of the River, Radical Acceptance. High atop a hill where the clouds often tangled with the pine tree tops, lay Kyle's studio. It was no ordinary studio. It was a sanctuary dedicated to order, a bastion against chaos. Every brush was aligned by size and stiffness, every paint tube was in its exact place on the chromatic spectrum, and the wooden floor was so clean it reflected the sunlight with a pale reverence. Kyle was an artist of the precise line, a master of control. His oil work was celebrated for its near-photographic realism, a testament to his ability to subject pigment and canvas to his iron will. But deep inside, Kyle harbored a secret, profound fear, the fear of the unpredictable, a terror that had taken root since a renowned critic years ago had dismissed one of his early works as a talented soul drowned in rigidity. Determined to conquer that fear and prove a versatility he felt he lacked, Kyle set out to master watercolor, the most ethereal and rebellious of all mediums. He bought the finest papers, the purest pigments, and the softest sable brushes. He prepared his workspace with the same methodical precision as always, and with a sigh of anticipation, dipped his brush into crystal-clear water and then into a vibrant cerulean blue. His intention was to paint the morning sky, a perfect, seamless gradient. But the instant the brush touched the damp paper, the water rebelled. The color bloomed, expanded, bled beyond the boundaries his mind had traced, creating a soft, diffuse cloud where he had planned a smooth expanse of blue. A pang of irritation shot through him. He tried again, this time with a leaf. He outlined an oak with the intention of filling it with defined greens, but the paper's dampness caused the colors to merge, creating unexpected shades and shapes that refused to obey the contours. It was like trying to sculpt fog. Every attempt was a new betrayal, a fresh affront to his need for control. The studio, once a refuge of order, became a battlefield. Crumpled sheets of paper piled up in the corners like fallen soldiers. His jaw was permanently clenched, and his grip on the brush was so tight his knuckles were white. "You won't obey me," he whispered with impotent fury, not to the paper but to himself, to his own inability to tame the very nature of the water. Watercolor wasn't a medium. It was a mirror reflecting his greatest fear, chaos. After a week of fruitless struggle, exhausted and on the verge of giving up, he remembered the stories of Lior, an old master who lived in the valley, next to the great river. It was said that Lior didn't paint landscapes, but conversed with them, and that his watercolors were not representations but echoes of the water's soul. With a portfolio full of his mistakes under his arm, Kyle descended the hill. He found Lior not in a studio but on the riverbank itself. The world was his workshop. Moss-covered rocks were his seats. The smooth sand was his sketching canvas, and his palette was a simple, flat stone where colors mixed with the river water. Lior, a man with eyes as clear and deep as a forest pool, listened to Kyle with infinite patience as he poured out his frustration and showed him his rigid, stained paintings. The old man didn't look at the paintings. Instead, he pointed to the river flowing at their feet. "You have been treating the water like a slave, Kyle," Lior said in a voice that sounded like the murmur of the current. "But water has no master. It is the master. Look how it flows. It doesn't fight the rocks. It embraces them, goes around them, polishes their edges over time and continues its journey. It doesn't get angry with the shore that contains it. It dances with its curves. The water doesn't see obstacles as errors in its journey. It sees them as part of the journey itself." Lior took a large sheet of rice paper, completely submerged it in the river, and placed it on a flat rock. Then, with a thick brush, he dropped a single spot of black ink into the center of the soaking wet paper. Kyle watched mesmerized as the ink drop came alive. It expanded into a delicate network of fractals, branching out like the veins of a leaf or the roots of a tree. There was no control, only an explosion of organic beauty. "You see a mistake in your paintings," Lior continued. "I see the water expressing itself. You see a stain, I see the footprint of life. You have been trying to shout orders at the river, Kyle. But the river does not understand orders. It only understands invitations. Stop telling it what to do. Instead, ask it where it wants to go. Observe its energy, its natural inclination, and then accompany it. Guide its flow instead of trying to contain it. True mastery does not lie in absolute control, but in the conscious dance with the uncontrollable." Kyle remained silent for a long time, watching the river, listening to Lior's words resonate with the sound of the water. He said goodbye with a bow and started the walk back to his studio, not with a new technique but with a new perception. When he arrived, he collected the crumpled sheets from the floor and smoothed them out. He looked at the stains, the merges, the blurred lines, and for the first time he didn't see failures. He saw the footprint of the water. He saw the expression of life. He took a clean sheet, wet it generously, and dropped a spot of green. He watched it expand. This time, instead of panicking, he smiled. He picked up his brush and, before the spot dried, gently touched it at one edge, guiding it, inviting it to become the crown of a wind-swept tree. He dropped blue and guided it to become the sky reflected in a puddle. He worked for hours, not as a general commanding his troops, but as a dance partner following his partner's rhythm. That day, Kyle did not paint his most perfect picture, but he painted his most honest, most vibrant, most alive one, and he understood that the beauty he longed for was not born from the absence of chaos, but from the full and conscious acceptance of it. Key teaching: radical acceptance. Kyle's parable is a reflection of the fundamental battle we wage in our own lives. We live in a silent state of war with reality. We have a preconceived idea of what our career, our relationships, our health, or our day should be like. And when life, like the watercolor, flows in a different direction, our instinctive reaction is resistance. We get frustrated, we get angry, we blame ourselves or others. We declare reality a mistake and spend a monumental amount of vital energy trying to force it to fit the mold of our expectations. This resistance is the source of most of our suffering. Radical acceptance, the principle Kyle discovers on the riverbank, is the alternative to this war. But it's crucial to understand what it is and what it is not. Radical acceptance is not resignation. Resignation is a passive defeat. It is saying there is nothing I can do, so I give up. Acceptance, on the other hand, is an act of power and clarity. It is saying, this is what it is. I see it without filters, without denial, and without complaint. Now, from this clear viewpoint, I can decide what to do. It is not an end point. It is the only true starting point. Acceptance is also not approval. You don't have to agree with the situation to accept it. You can accept that someone has treated you unfairly without approving of their behavior. You can accept that you have an illness without liking having it. The first act of peace is to stop arguing with what is. Reality will always win that argument. Arguing with it is like trying to push a river upstream. It is exhausting and useless. Imagine you are holding a heavy beach ball under the water. It requires constant, exhausting effort to keep it submerged. Your muscles are tense. Your attention is completely focused on that struggle. That ball is the reality you refuse to accept. The resistance is that constant effort. Acceptance is simply letting go of the ball. The moment you release it, it emerges to the surface. You no longer have to fight it. Now you can see it clearly. You can swim around it. You can decide to push it toward the shore or simply let it float beside you. The energy you spent resisting is now available for conscious and creative action. This is the paradox of power. True strength does not come from resistance, but from intelligent surrender. Not a surrender of defeat, but a surrender to the reality of the present moment. When you stop fighting the current, you can begin to feel its direction. Only then can you use your intelligence and will to navigate, to use the river's force to your advantage. You move from being a victim of circumstance to being a conscious participant in the dance of life. Accepting that you are lost is the first step to finding a new path. Accepting your fear is the first step to cultivating courage. Accepting the end of something is the first step to welcoming a new beginning. The birth of your inner river, the true beginning of your power, does not happen when you manage to control life, but in the moment you radically accept its uncontrollable and beautiful nature. The river practice. Sensing the emotional current now, I invite you to a practice to directly experience this principle. It is not an intellectual exercise, but an immersion in experience. Find a place where you can sit or lie down without being disturbed for the next 10 or 15 minutes. A place where you can let go, even for a moment, of the need to control anything. Adopt a comfortable posture with your back straight but not rigid. Allow your hands to rest gently on your lap or at your sides. And when you are ready, close your eyes. Begin by bringing your attention to your breath. Don't try to change it. Simply observe it. Feel the air entering through your nose a little cooler. Feel how it fills your lungs, how your abdomen gently rises, and feel the air leaving a little warmer as your body relaxes. Take a moment to anchor yourself in this simple, natural rhythm. With each exhale, imagine you are letting go of a little more of the day's tension. Release the tension in your jaw, your shoulders, your hands. Now, with this feeling of calm as a foundation, I ask you to invite your awareness to an emotion you have been resisting lately. Perhaps it is a persistent anxiety, an echo of sadness, a spark of irritation, or a heavy layer of fatigue. You don't have to force it. Just create the space for it to appear if it wishes. Don't look for the biggest or most dramatic emotion, just one that is present. Once you sense that emotion, however subtle, your only task is to feel it. Like Kyle learned to observe the water. Resist the urge to analyze it, to justify it, to attach a story to it, or to try to get rid of it. Simply feel, ask yourself, where does this emotion live in my body? Perhaps you feel it as a knot in your throat, a pressure in your chest, an emptiness in your stomach, or a heat in your face. Bring all your curious and kind attention to that physical sensation. Give it a form. If it had a texture, would it be rough or smooth? If it had a temperature, would it be cold or hot? If it had a color, what would it be? There are no right answers, only your perception. Now here is the heart of the practice. Imagine that this emotion, with its color, texture, and temperature, is a current of water flowing through you. It is a river of energy moving through the landscape of your body. And now the most important distinction. You are not the current. You are the riverbed. You are the vast, stable, conscious space through which this current flows. Repeat this to yourself in silence. I am the riverbed, not the current. Your job is not to stop the water or redirect it or clean it. Your only job is to be the riverbed, to allow the current to flow. If the current is sadness, allow the river of sadness to pass through you. If it is anxiety, allow the river of anxiety to move. By giving it permission to flow, You remove the power it gains from your resistance. You will discover that, like any river, the current has a beginning and an end. It moves, it changes intensity, and eventually it runs its course, leaving you with a sense of greater space and peace. Stay here, being the riverbed, allowing any current that arises to flow freely, for as long as you are comfortable. No struggle, no control, only a spacious, radical acceptance. When you are ready to conclude the practice, slowly bring your attention back to your breath, then to the sensation of your body in the chair or on the floor. Listen to the sounds of the room. And when you feel ready, slowly open your eyes. Take a moment to notice how you feel. The emotion may still be there, but perhaps your relationship with it has changed. You have practiced the art of flowing. You have experienced the birth of your river. Chapter 2. The Echo of the Mountain, Inner Listening. On the high peaks, where the world of men was only a distant rumor, and the only sound was the wind combing the grass, lived a young shepherdess named Ilara. She cared for her flock with an innate skill, knowing every rock, every shelter, every medicinal plant. Her world was one of austere, silent beauty, but in the heart of that silence, a restlessness grew within her, an emptiness that the stillness of the mountains could not fill. She felt a deep dissonance between the serene wisdom that surrounded her, the certainty of the sun rising, the faithfulness of the stars to their course, and the whirlwind of unanswered questions dwelling in her mind. Who am I beyond this mountain? What is the purpose of my days? Is there a song my soul should sing that I do not yet know? This longing became so intense a thirst that the quiet of her home began to feel like a cage. Convinced that the answers could not be found in the place she already knew, but in the vast world stretching beyond, she made a decision. She entrusted her flock to a neighbor, packed a small bag with bread and cheese, and descended her mountain in search of wisdom. Her first destination was the famous City of Scholars, a labyrinth of narrow streets and tall towers filled with libraries. The air smelled of dust and old paper. She sought out the most renowned sages, brilliant men and women who had dedicated their lives to the study of philosophy, logic, and reason. She sat at their feet, listening to complex theories about the nature of existence. She filled entire notebooks with arguments and counter-arguments, with syllogisms and paradoxes. At night in her small rented room, she tried to apply that logic to her life, attempting to reason her way to happiness, to build an intellectual map toward her purpose. But the more she learned, the more fragmented her world became. Every answer she found generated 10 new questions. The words of the sages, so clear on paper, turned into a confusing noise in her heart. She felt more lost than ever, with a mind full of others' knowledge and a spirit increasingly empty. Disappointed, she traveled south to the lands of the sun, where the greatest gurus and spiritual teachers were said to dwell in temples of serene beauty. There the air smelled of incense and flowers. Ilara immersed herself in devotion. She learned to meditate for hours, chant ancient mantras, and follow rituals that promised enlightenment. She listened to charismatic masters speak of detachment, cosmic unity, and surrender to the divine order. Their words were like music, profound and moving. Ilara tried with all her might to feel the peace they spoke of, to adopt their beliefs, to walk the path they had laid out. But, while she deeply respected their wisdom, she felt as if she were wearing clothes that did not belong to her. Her meditations were filled with a mind that yearned for her mountains, and her chants felt like the imitation of an unfamiliar melody. The wisdom of the gurus was a radiant sun, but its light seemed unable to penetrate the fog of her own individual confusion. Her final destination was the great coastal metropolis, a hub of commerce and activity. Their wisdom was found not in temples or libraries, but in the clamor of the market. Everyone had an opinion, a secret to success, a formula for happiness they were willing to share or sell. Ilara listened to merchants, artists, politicians, and charlatans. They spoke to her of ambition, wealth, pleasure, and influence. She was swept up by the trends, by the fashions of thought, by the fear of being left behind. She tried to be more outgoing, more astute, more like those who seemed to navigate the chaos with such confidence. But the incessant noise of the city, the torrent of unsolicited advice and social expectations, was the final test. She felt completely dissolved, an echo of 1,000 outside voices with no voice of her own. Defeated, penniless, and with her soul more exhausted than ever, Ilara began the long journey home. The return trip was not one of hope, but of resignation. She had searched for the truth in the wisest places in the world and had only found noise. She had failed. The silence of her mountains no longer seemed like a cage, but the only refuge for her weary spirit. Seasons passed. Ilara returned to her life as a shepherdess, to the simple routine of guiding her flock beneath the sun and stars. She had stopped searching. One autumn afternoon, while leading the sheep to a rocky gorge to shield them from the wind, a wave of profound melancholy overtook her, an echo of all the loneliness of her journey. Without thinking, to not feel so alone, she let out a song, a simple, wordless melody born directly from that sadness. The sound, pure and bare, traveled through the canyon, and seconds later the mountain returned a perfect echo, clear, faithful. She stopped, startled by the clarity of the response. She sang again, this time a short, sharp note, almost a cry of frustration. The echo returned it with the same intensity. For the rest of the afternoon, she played with the mountain. She sang melodies of joy, and the mountain returned them. She whispered notes of peace, and the mountain whispered them back. And then, in the profound silence that mediated between her voice and the mountain's response, she understood everything with a clarity no library or guru could have given her. The mountain was not giving her any new answer. It wasn't teaching her any secret wisdom. It was simply, with absolute fidelity, returning her own truth to her. The answer had never been in the echo, but in the voice that she, at last, had dared to emit. For all those years she had been trying to hear the song of others, without realizing that the only melody that could heal her was her own. Wisdom was not something acquired externally, but something revealed from within. It was not knowledge to be found, but a voice to be heard. And that voice could only be heard when everything else was silent. In that gorge, surrounded only by her sheep and the ancient rocks, Ilara for the first time heard herself, and she realized that she had never been empty. She had only been listening in the wrong direction. Key teaching. Inner listening. Ilara's odyssey is a mirror of our own search. We live in the age of information, a world screaming from 1,000 directions. Just like Ilara, when we feel that inner restlessness, that question about our purpose or our path, our first reaction is to search outside. We look for answers in books, podcasts, courses, experts, mentors, spiritual leaders, and the endless scroll of social media. We become collectors of others' wisdom, hoping that one of their truths will fit perfectly into the void we feel. The problem is that this external noise, however well-intentioned, often drowns out the only voice that truly matters, your own. Inner listening is the art of tuning into this voice, to that internal compass we all possess and call intuition. Intuition is not a magical or irrational hunch. It is a form of deep, holistic intelligence. It is the vast database of all your lived experiences, your subconscious knowledge, and your connection to the inherent intelligence of life, processed in an instant to give you a feeling, a knowing that the logical mind often cannot explain. It is the gut feeling, the sense of expansion when something is right for you, or the subtle contraction when something is not. We have learned to deeply distrust this faculty. Our education and society have trained us to value what is external, quantifiable, and logically demonstrable. We trust data, studies, and expert opinions, but we distrust a deep feeling we cannot justify with a graph. We fear looking foolish, making an illogical decision and making a mistake. So we silence that voice. We bury it under layers of analysis, pros and cons, and the opinions of others, until its whisper becomes nearly inaudible. But intuition, like the course of an underground river, never disappears. It continues to flow beneath the surface. Cultivating inner listening is not about acquiring a new skill, but about an act of excavation. It's about removing the layers of noise so that this subterranean current can once again emerge to the surface. This requires the deliberate creation of silence. Silence is the ecosystem where intuition thrives. In a world designed to steal our attention every second, choosing silence is a radical act of personal sovereignty. It is in those moments of stillness, when we turn off the screens and step away from the noise, that we can begin to distinguish between the voices of fear, the voices of the ego, the voices of outside expectations, and the clear, serene whisper of our own truth. Like Ilara, you will discover that the universe often works like a great echo. When you emit a clear signal from within, the external world often rearranges itself to reflect that clarity. But if your interior is a chaos of contradictory voices, the echo you receive will be equally confusing. Inner listening, therefore, is not a passive act. It is the fundamental act of tuning. It's like the musician tuning their instrument before playing the symphony. Before acting in the world, we must first listen to ourselves to ensure that the note we are about to play is authentic and true. The river practice, creating space for the echo. This practice is an invitation to become, like Alara, a listener to your own echo. It requires no special skill, only your willingness to create a small clearing of silence in the dense forest of your daily life. Find a place where you can be quiet and undisturbed for 10 minutes. Turn off your phone or put it on airplane mode. This is your sacred time. Sit in a chair with your back straight and your feet planted firmly on the floor, or on the floor with your legs crossed. Place your hands in a comfortable position. Gently close your eyes. Begin by bringing your awareness to the present moment through your senses. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Feel the texture of your clothes on your skin. Notice the temperature of the air around you. Now listen. What are the farthest sounds you can perceive? And the closest? Simply register them without judgment. Now bring your attention to your breath, anchoring yourself in the gentle rhythm of the inhale and the exhale. Imagine your mind is a deep water lake. During the day, the wind of activities, conversations, and worries has stirred the surface, creating ripples and stirring up the sediment from the bottom, leaving the water cloudy and opaque. Your task in these 10 minutes is not to force the water to calm down. It is not to fight the ripples. Your only task is to sit on the shore of the lake and wait. With each breath, the wind slightly lessens. Little by little, the ripples smooth out. The sediment on its own begins to settle on the bottom. Thoughts will arise. It is the nature of the mind. The grocery list, a memory, a worry. Do not get angry at them. Do not try to chase them away. Simply observe them, as if they were clouds passing across the sky reflected in the lake. Acknowledge them. A thought about work. And then very gently return your attention to the silence behind the thought, to the water that is calming down. Do this for several minutes. Just sitting, waiting, allowing the sediment of your mind to settle on its own. There is nothing to achieve. The simple act of staying in silence is the practice itself. When you feel a degree of calmness has set in, I invite you to ask a question to your inner lake. Do not shout it, do not demand it. Simply, very gently, drop the question into the center of your stillness, as if it were a pebble, and observe the ripples it creates. The question might be something like, what is most important for me right now? Or what do I need to let go of? Or simply, what is the next step? After asking the question, do not look for an answer. Let it go. Trust that the question has been heard by the wisdom of your depths. Just stay in the silence a little longer. The answer rarely arrives as a booming voice. Often the echo of the mountain is subtle. You may receive nothing during the meditation, and that is perfectly fine. The practice is about creating the space. The answer may come later, as a sudden feeling of clarity while showering, an idea that surfaces while you are walking, or in the words of a friend that resonate in a special way. You have tuned your ear. Now stay open to hearing the music. To finish, take a deep, conscious breath. Gently move your fingers and toes, and when you are ready, slowly open your eyes. Carry this little fragment of silence with you into the rest of your day, like a treasure, as a reminder that beneath all the noise, your own truth is always waiting to be heard. Chapter 3. Stones polished by the current, resilience. In a valley known for the purity of its white clay, lived a potter named Anya. Her creations were legendary, not for their extravagant designs, but for their almost supernatural perfection. Every bowl, every vase, every plate that came off her wheel was a study in impeccable symmetry, and a smoothness so absolute that it seemed like petrified silk. Anya's identity, her pride and her reputation were inextricably linked to this pursuit of flawless perfection. She believed with an almost religious conviction that a work's greatness depended entirely on the purity of its origin. An impeccable material was the only starting point for impeccable art. One year, late rains made her usual white clay deposit inaccessible. Impatient to work, she remembered a spot upstream, a wild bend where the current was stronger and the banks less traveled. With great effort, She extracted a large amount of clay from this new location. At first glance, it seemed rich and pliable, but as soon as she plunged her hands into it, her heart sank. The clay was full of impurities. It was gritty, sandy, and speckled with countless tiny pebbles and mineral fragments. Her first thought was one of betrayal. The river had offered her a flawed material, an imperfect canvas, a failure before she had even begun. But Anya was not a woman to give up easily. She spent the next few days in an exhausting battle against the clay. She set up sieves, spent hours filtering the material, painstakingly picking out every tiny stone with her fingertips. It was tedious, draining work that left her hands raw. Finally, with a quantity of clay she deemed pure enough, she sat at her wheel. However, the clay seemed to remember its wild origin. The fine grit she couldn't remove created subtle resistance under her fingers. When she tried to create her tall, slender shapes, micro-fissures appeared on the surface. The vessels she managed to fire often cracked in the kiln, unable to withstand the heat with the integrity of her old clay. Her studio, usually a place of serene creation, filled with palpable tension and the desolate sound of broken pottery. Her identity as the potter of perfection was crumbling. One afternoon, at the height of her despair, she left the studio and walked aimlessly upstream, back to the spot where she had extracted the rebellious clay. She sat on the bank, head in her hands, feeling the weight of her failure. Absently, her hand grazed the stones on the shore. They were river stones, exquisitely smooth, polished to a dull sheen by the incessant work of the water. They were perfect. She held one in her palm, feeling its sleek, comforting shape, and then she looked up at the rugged mountains towering over the valley. She saw the sharp ridges, the jagged rocks, and the angular boulders, and in that instant, a deep seismic realization shook her. The perfectly smooth stone she held in her hand had not been born that way. At some point, it had been a sharp, jagged splinter from those same mountains torn off by ice or a landslide. It had fallen into the river as a crude, imperfect, anonymous fragment. And it was the journey, the struggle, the constant friction against other stones, and the relentless force of the current that had transformed it. Its beauty was not the result of an easy, sheltered life, but the evidence of its incredible resilience. The river had not destroyed it. It had revealed it. Anya looked again at the clay on the bank. The small embedded stones no longer seemed like impurities. They were miniature river stones, each with its own history of transformation. They were not defects. They were the river's signature, the proof of the inherent strength and resilience of the material. She returned to her studio not with a solution to her problem, but with a completely new vision. She threw her sieves aside and took a large lump of the impure clay, just as the river had offered it. She sat at the wheel, and this time she did not fight. She closed her eyes and felt the material under her hands, not as an adversary but as a collaborator. She felt the grit, the tiny stones, and instead of trying to suppress them, she invited them to be part of the form. She developed a new way of working. As the vessel rose, she allowed some of the stones to subtly emerge to the surface, creating unexpected textures. She stopped looking for perfect symmetry and began listening to the shape the clay itself wanted to take, a form often more robust and organic. But her true revelation came in the kiln. She remembered that the clay's mineral fragments reacted to the heat in unpredictable ways. Instead of using her uniform white glazes, she began to experiment with finishes that enhanced these reactions. When she opened the kiln after the first firing, she held her breath. The vessels were not white or smooth. They were works of wild, earthy beauty. Where iron minerals had reacted with the glaze, constellations of rust-colored speckles had bloomed. Where a tiny piece of quartz was near the surface, a crystalline halo had formed. The vessels were not perfect by her old standards. They were infinitely more interesting, deeper, more alive. They didn't just hold water. They held the story of the mountain and the river. They became her most celebrated work, not despite their imperfections, but because of them. Key teaching: the polished stone. The story of Anya and her rebellious clay is not just the story of an artist. It is a mirror of our own relationship with adversity. Most of us have been raised with an ideal of fragile strength. We believe that being resilient means being like steel, hard, inflexible, impermeable to damage. We believe that resilience is the ability to bounce back from a challenge and return to exactly who we were before, without a single dent, without a single scar. We strive to present a smooth, polished surface to the world, hiding our cracks and our impurities for fear of being seen as weak or flawed. But this model of resilience is an illusion. Steel under enough pressure doesn't bend, it breaks. The hardest armor can be pierced, and once broken, it is useless. True resilience, the kind the river teaches us, is of an entirely different nature. It is not the resilience of steel, but the resilience of the river stone. Authentic resilience is the process of allowing the currents of life to shape us. We all begin our journey as rocks with sharp edges. Our ego, our rigid beliefs, our childish expectations, our unacknowledged vulnerabilities. Life, with its inevitable challenges, losses, failures, disappointments, illnesses, is the river current. And this current is abrasive. The process of being polished hurts. The friction of life against our sharpest parts is uncomfortable and often painful. Our natural tendency is to resist this process. We try to get out of the water, avoid the friction, protect our sharp edges at all costs. But in doing so, we not only halt our growth but often cause more damage. A rock that fights the current only hits itself harder. True wisdom lies in understanding that the pain of the friction is not a punishment, but the very agent of our transformation. It's not about seeking suffering, but about relating to it in a conscious way when it inevitably arrives. It is the recognition that this specific challenge, this very difficulty, is the tool life is using to smooth a sharp edge in us, to teach us humility, compassion, or courage. This brings us to a crucial distinction, the difference between a scar and a mark of integration. A scar in the emotional sense is a wound that has closed but still hurts when touched. It is unprocessed trauma, a memory we avoid, a part of our history that we have isolated and treated as a defect. We try to cover it up, pretend it's not there. The wound becomes a weak point, a place where our armor is thinnest. Integration, on the other hand, is what Anya did with the stones in her clay. It is the process of taking the wound, the challenge, the imperfection, and instead of hiding it, making it a conscious and honored part of our story. It is transforming the point of pain into a point of power. When we integrate a difficulty, it stops being a sensitive scar and becomes a mark of wisdom, a testament to our capacity to survive and transform. It is no longer a source of shame, but a source of empathy. It allows us to connect with others in their pain, because we ourselves have navigated those turbulent waters. Our stones become the bridges we build to others. This is the paradoxical beauty of resilience. It is not found despite difficulties, but because of them. A perfectly smooth, mass-produced vessel lacks character, lacks history. It is predictable and ultimately forgettable. Anya's vessel, with its textures, its unexpected color specks, and its embedded stones, is a unique work of art. It is beautiful precisely because it reveals its origin, its struggle, and its transformation. In the same way, it is our imperfections, the marks life has left on us, and the way we have chosen to integrate them that give us our depth, our character, and our unique beauty. Being resilient is not returning to who you were before the challenge. It is becoming the person you were transformed into by it. Intellectually understanding, this is the first step. But true transformation happens when we bring this wisdom to the experience of our own body, our own inner river. And for this, I now invite you to a practice, a moment of stillness to find and honor your own stones. The river practice, honoring your stones. Find a comfortable position, seated or lying down, in a place where you feel safe and can be uninterrupted. Gently close your eyes. Begin, as always, by anchoring yourself in your breath. Take a deep, slow inhalation through your nose, feeling your abdomen and chest expand. And exhale completely through your mouth with an audible sigh, releasing the air and with it, the superficial tensions of the day. Do this 2 more times. Inhale peace. Exhale resistance. Now allow your breath to return to its natural rhythm and bring your attention to the sensation of your body. Feel the points of contact between your body and the surface supporting you. Feel the force of gravity, gently anchoring you to the earth. Create an inner space of safety and calm. From this place of presence, I ask you to invite your awareness to a challenge you are currently facing. It doesn't have to be the biggest one of your life. It could be a difficult memory, a current worry, a persistent self-criticism, or a facet of yourself that you judge as an imperfection. Allow this challenge to take the symbolic shape of a stone. Simply let the image of a stone appear in your mind, representing this challenge. Now visualize yourself holding this stone in the palm of your hand. Take a moment to explore it without judgment. Feel its weight. Is it heavy or light? Feel its temperature. Is it cold or warm? And most importantly, feel its texture. Run your imaginary fingers over its surface and locate its sharp edges. These edges are the points of pain, the aspects of the challenge that hurt or discomfort you the most. Do not rush. Courageously and kindly, acknowledge these edges. This is an act of radical acceptance, of seeing the situation as it is with all its pain. Now visualize a river flowing gently in front of you. This is no ordinary river. It is the river of your own compassion. Its waters are made of acceptance, kindness, patience, and unconditional love toward yourself. Listen to its gentle murmur. Feel its healing, constant energy. Very carefully, you are going to place your stone with all its sharp edges into this compassionate current. Watch how the water immediately embraces it. The river does not fight the stone. It does not reject it for its roughness. It simply flows around it, over it, through it. Stay observing this image. Visualize how the constant, loving current of your compassion begins its slow and patient work. With each passing wave, a sharp edge softens a little. With each murmur of the water, a rough spot is polished. This is not a violent process. It is a process of gentle erosion, of transformation through loving persistence. The change may be imperceptible at first, but trust that the process is occurring. You are allowing your own capacity for healing to act upon your pain. Remain with this visualization for several minutes. Watch the water flowing over your stone. If emotions arise, allow them to be part of the water flowing through you. You are learning not to resist the pain, but to bathe it in compassion. When you feel it is time, visualize reaching out your hand and picking up the stone from the riverbed. Hold it in your palm again. Notice if there has been any change. Perhaps the sharpest edges have rounded off. Perhaps it feels a little lighter, or its temperature is warmer. It may not be perfectly smooth yet, and that is fine. Transformation is a journey, not a destination. Thank the stone for the lessons it holds, and thank your inner river for its healing power. Now the final and most important step, integration. Visualize bringing this stone, now softer, toward the center of your chest, toward your heart. Allow it to settle there, not as a foreign body but as an integrated part of your being. It is no longer an external wound, but an internal source of strength and wisdom. Feel how its weight is now an anchor of resilience. Feel how its story becomes a part of your strength. Take one last deep breath, filling yourself with this new sense of wholeness. As you exhale, slowly open your eyes. You have practiced the art of resilience. You have not eliminated the challenge, you have transformed it. You have allowed the current to polish you. Chapter 4. The Backwaters of Peace, Conscious Rest. Leo was a young fisherman whose worth, in his own mind, was measured by the sweat on his brow and the ache in his muscles. He inhabited a world governed by the unwavering belief that effort was the only true God, and constant movement its only gospel. Every day, long before the sun bleached the horizon, he was already at the riverbank, his jaw clenched and his gaze fiercely determined. His nets, though expertly woven, were always a little frayed from incessant use. His skin was tanned and sun-scorched, and a chronic tension was nestled in his shoulders, a permanent knot of willpower. To Leo, the river was not a collaborator, but a formidable adversary, a wild beast whose bounty had to be ripped from its guts by brute force and tireless persistence. He instinctively sought out the most turbulent parts of the river, the furious currents where white water boiled and crashed against the rocks. There, he believed, resided the true challenge, the true test of a fisherman. He spent the entire day casting his heavy net over and over at a frantic pace, fighting the force of the water that tried to snatch it away. Every throw was a battle. Every retrieval of the net, almost always empty, was a small defeat that fueled his stubbornness. He looked at the other fishermen, older and slower, and felt a mix of disdain and superiority. They were complacent, he told himself. They didn't understand that life, like the river, only rewarded those who fought without pause. Yet at the end of each exhausting day, it was his basket that remained shamefully empty, while the others returned home with a modest but steady catch. One scorching hot noon, after a particularly fruitless morning, Leo's frustration boiled over. He threw his net to the ground with a choked shout and slumped onto the grass, his chest heaving. It was then that he truly noticed Mara. He had seen her hundreds of times, an elderly woman from the village whom everyone treated with silent reverence. She always occupied the same spot, a little further down next to a backwater. It was a wide, deep pool where the river seemed to pause for a breath. The waters there were so still and clear, they looked like a fragment of liquid sky, shaded by the branches of a weeping willow whose leaves caressed the surface. Mara was sitting on a warm, flat rock, so motionless she seemed part of the landscape. She held a simple bamboo fishing rod, its line disappearing into the water without the slightest tremor. Her eyes were closed, and on her face was an expression of profound serenity. Leo watched her for almost an hour. In all that time, she didn't move. She didn't cast the line, she didn't change the bait. She showed no sign of impatience. She was the antithesis of everything he stood for. She was the personification of inaction. And beside her, in a wicker basket half submerged in the cool water, several large, silver fish were swaying. The contradiction was so blatant, so insulting to his philosophy of effort, that he couldn't stand it. He got up and walked toward her, intending to interrogate her to uncover the trick. "What is your secret, old woman?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "I have thrown my net 200 times today in the strongest current. You've been sitting here sleeping in the sun. How is your basket full and mine empty?" Mara opened her eyes slowly. There was no surprise in them, only an amused calm. She looked at Leo, then at her own basket, and then at the river. "The river has its own rhythm, young man," Mara said in a soft but clear voice. "And so do the fish. You search the rapids in the furious water. You think that because there is more movement, there is more life. But in the rapids, the fish are as busy as you are, fighting not to be swept away. They are stressed, scared. They have no time to eat." She gestured toward the tranquil pool. "This is a backwater. It is where the river stops to rest. The water calms, the sediment settles to the bottom, and life flourishes in peace. The largest and wisest fish do not waste their energy in constant struggle. They come here to feed, to replenish themselves. I don't fish with effort," she continued. "I fish with presence. My stillness is not laziness. It is an invitation. By being still, I become part of the backwater. I don't frighten the fish, and by being silent, I can see what you in your haste cannot see." Leo frowned. "See what?" "The leap of a dragonfly over the water, which tells me where the insects that the small fish feed on are. The fleeting shadow beneath the surface that betrays a large fish. The subtle change in the light that indicates when they are most likely to bite. The river is constantly whispering its secrets, but your effort is so noisy that you can hear nothing." Mara's words struck Leo with the force of the current he so loved. He felt a pang of shame. He sat down next to her in silence. Mara said nothing more. She simply closed her eyes again. Leo, for the first time in his life, forced himself to be still. It was torture. Every muscle in his body screamed to move, to do something. His mind raced in circles, planning his next cast. But he stayed. And as he did, the world around him began to change. He noticed the buzz of a bee near his ear. He saw the intricate pattern of the willow bark. He heard the song of a bird he had never distinguished before. And then he saw it, a small ripple in the center of the backwater, followed by a bubble. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible sign that in his usual state of agitation, he would have missed. He looked at Mara. She smiled slightly without opening her eyes. Leo understood. It wasn't about doing nothing. It was about acting from a place of deep attention and stillness. That day Leo caught no fish, but he went home with the most valuable catch of his life, the understanding that at the heart of every river and of all life, the backwaters of peace are not a detour, but an essential part of the current. Key teaching. The wisdom of stillness. Leo's story is the chronicle of our civilization. We live under the tyranny of productivity, a culture that glorifies exhaustion and demonizes rest. We have internalized the belief that our value as human beings is directly proportional to our ability to produce, to do, to stay constantly busy. We fill every second of our calendars, answer emails at midnight, and feel a pang of guilt if we spend an afternoon without achieving something. We have turned being busy into a badge of honor, and rest at best into a second-class activity that we only allow ourselves when we are on the verge of collapse. We have developed a collective fear of emptiness, of the pause, of silence. But this way of life, this attempt to live perpetually in the rapids, is unnatural and ultimately unsustainable. Nature itself, our greatest teacher, operates in rhythmic cycles of activity and repose. Day gives way to night. Summer surrenders to winter. The tide rises and then falls. No living system can maintain a state of constant maximal output. Rest is not a system failure. It is an integral and vital part of its intelligence. It is during the night that plants process the sunlight they absorb during the day. It is during winter that the earth regenerates for the spring planting. Rest is not the absence of productivity. It is a different and essential form of it. In our own lives, the backwaters of peace serve this same critical function. It is in those moments of conscious stillness that our subconscious mind works on problems that our conscious mind cannot solve. How many times have you found the solution to a complex problem not while sitting at your desk, but while showering, walking the dog, or simply staring out the window? It is in the pause when we release mental effort that the pieces click into place. It is during rest that our body repairs itself, our nervous system regulates, and our experiences are integrated. A day full of action without pauses is like reading a book without spaces between the words. The information is there, but it is incomprehensible and overwhelming. It is important, however, to distinguish between the rest that dulls and the rest that restores. The rest we often seek is that of collapse, falling onto the couch to get lost in hours of television or the infinite social media scroll. This, more than a backwater, is an attempt to anesthetize our exhaustion. Conscious rest, the true backwater, is different. It is intentional. It is an act of presence. It is deliberately choosing to step out of the main current of thoughts and obligations to enter a space of serene quiet. It can be as simple as sitting on a park bench doing nothing, savoring a cup of tea without distraction, or walking in nature paying attention to the sounds and smells. The backwaters of peace are strategic. They are the pause an expert musician makes before a crucial note, a silence that charges the sound that follows with emotion and power. They are the white space on a page that allows the words to breathe and hold meaning. In our lives, these pauses allow us to recalibrate our inner compass. They give us the clarity to ensure that, when we return to action, our effort is well-directed, aligned with our true values, and not simply a frantic movement for the sake of movement. As Leo learned, the most effective and powerful action often arises from the deepest stillness. Understanding the vital necessity of rest is the first step. The next is to consciously create these sacred spaces in the structure of our days. I now invite you to a practice so that you can discover and inhabit your own inner backwater. At the river practice, finding your inner backwater, find a comfortable position, seated or lying down, a place where you can feel supported and calm. Close your eyes. Begin by taking 3 slow, deep breaths, as if signaling to your body and mind that you are entering a different time and space. Inhale deeply through your nose, feeling the air fill every corner of your lungs. Hold it for a moment, and then slowly exhale through your mouth, releasing the air along with the noise and hurry of the day. Now visualize your life, your energy, your thoughts as a great river. Observe its main current. Perhaps today it is fast and turbulent, full of rapids of pending tasks, worries, and conversations. Feel the force of that current, the way it sweeps you along. Do not judge it, do not try to stop it. Simply acknowledge it. This is the energy you have been navigating with. Now bring your attention to the bank of your river. Visualize that to one side, there is a small inlet to a quiet, sheltered pool. It is your inner backwater of peace. Perhaps it is shaded by tall, leafy trees. Maybe the sunlight filters through the leaves, creating dancing patterns on the water. The water in this backwater is perfectly clear, serene, and still. This place has always been here, waiting for you. With your next inhalation, visualize gently guiding your boat, or simply yourself, out of the main current and toward the entrance of this backwater. Feel the immediate shift in energy. The roar of the rapids turns into a distant murmur. The struggle to hold your course ceases. The water here supports you effortlessly. You are safe. You are at peace. Spend the next few moments immersing yourself in the senses of this place. Feel the temperature of the calm water on your skin. Listen to the profound silence, perhaps interrupted only by the song of a bird or the whisper of the wind in the leaves. Observe the clarity of the water. You can see down to the sandy bottom, where small, colorful fish move unhurriedly. The sediment of your mind, stirred up by the current of the day, begins to settle slowly, leaving the water of your consciousness crystalline. In this place, there is nothing to do, nothing to solve, nothing to achieve. Your only task is to receive. Allow the stillness to nourish you. Allow the peace to restore your energy reserves. Feel the knots of tension in your shoulders and in your mind begin to dissolve in the healing water of your own inner sanctuary. If a thought from the main current tries to enter your backwater, simply observe it like a leaf floating on the surface and then drifting away, returning to the peace of stillness. This backwater is your birthright. It is an inner space that belongs to you and to which you can return whenever you need it. You don't have to wait until you are exhausted. You can visit it for a few minutes in the middle of a busy day, simply by closing your eyes and breathing. When you feel ready to conclude, take one last deep inhalation, as if you could drink from this peace. As you exhale, know that you are not leaving this place behind. You are taking it with you. Visualize yourself returning to the main current, but now you are renewed. You navigate with a new calm, a new clarity, carrying the serenity of the backwater in your heart. Gently move your fingers and toes. When you are ready, slowly open your eyes, bringing the peace of your backwater into the world around you. Chapter 5. The Murmur of Gratitude, Appreciation of the Journey. Inez was a gardener of impeccable technical skill. Her flower beds were laid out with geometric precision, her hedges were pruned to perfection, and she knew the Latin name of every plant she cultivated. Her garden was a testament to discipline and knowledge, yet it lacked soul. The flowers seemed to bloom out of obligation. The trees grew with a kind of silent resignation. The garden, like its creator, was competent but unhappy. This was because Inez lived under the spell of a perpetual murmur, the murmur of complaint. Her internal monologue was a litany of dissatisfactions. If the sun shone brightly, she sighed at the burden of having to water. If a soft rain came, she worried about fungus appearing on her roses. The soil was always too clay-heavy or too sandy. Insects were a plague sent to personally torment her. Every morning she went out to her garden, not with the joy of creation, but with the critical eye of an inspector looking for flaws. And, of course, she always found them. Her focus was not on the blooming rose, but on the aphid perched on its stem. She didn't marvel at the strength of an oak, but lamented the leaves she would have to rake in the autumn. Her life, like her garden, was a project that never measured up to her demanding, dissatisfied standards. Next to her property, separated only by an old stone wall, was Silas's garden. Silas's garden was everything Inez's was not. It was a whirlwind of life, an explosion of color and movement that seemed to follow no rules. Wildflowers grew alongside cultivated roses, bees constantly hummed in symphony, and birds nested in the unpruned trees. To Inez, Silas's garden was chaos, an offense to the principles of good gardening. Yet she could not deny its vitality. It radiated a wild joy that her own orderly garden could only dream of emulating. Silas, an elderly man with slow movements and an easy smile, spent hours in his garden, often just sitting on a bench watching. One spring, an unexpected late frost fell upon the valley. Inez woke up and rushed to her garden to find the buds of her most prized rose bushes blackened and wilted. It was the last straw. With tears of rage and frustration, she crossed the wall into Silas's garden. She found him as usual sitting on his bench, watching a snail glide across a leaf. "Silas," she exclaimed, her voice cracking, "the frost has destroyed my best roses. All my work ruined. Your garden seems untouched. What is your secret? What product do you use? What fertilizer? You must give me your secret." Silas looked up, his tranquil eyes meeting her stormy ones. He pointed to no product, no tool. "The secret is not in what I use, Inez," he said softly. "It is in what I say." Inez looked at him, confused. "Do you talk to your plants?" "Something like that," Silas smiled. "But more important is the conversation I have with myself while I'm here. You go out to your garden to fight a battle. You look for enemies, the weed, the insect, the frost. I go out to witness miracles. The difference is not in the soil, dear Inez. It is in the way you look." He stood up and guided her toward one of his own roses, which also had some ice-damaged buds. "You see the work of the frost and you curse the cold. I see it, and I thank the rose for the strength it holds in its roots to sprout again. I thank the frost for reminding me that life is fragile and precious. I thank the worm that aerates the soil, even if it eats a root now and then. I thank the weed. It shows you where the soil is most fertile, and teaches you about tenacity. Stop cursing, Inez. Start giving thanks. Silas's words sounded like the ravings of an old man to Inez. Thank the frost that had killed her flowers? It was absurd, ridiculous. However, she was so desperate, so tired of her own bitterness, that a small part of her decided to try his madman's remedy. The next morning she went out to her garden feeling utterly foolish. She knelt beside a plant and whispered, "Thank you for the dew." She felt stupid. But she continued, "Thank you, Earth, for holding these roots. Thank you, Sun, for the energy you give, even if you sometimes burn." At first the words were mechanical, empty. But she forced herself to follow Silas's advice for days, and then something began to shift. By forcing herself to look for things to be thankful for, she began to notice. For the first time, she truly noticed the iridescent pattern on a fly's wings. She observed how a dewdrop, suspended on the edge of a leaf, held the reflection of the entire world. She saw the incredible engineering of a spider's web. She discovered the tenacity of a small violet flower, bravely growing in the crack of a stone. Her focus, which for years had been trained to scan and detect problems, began to reorient itself. Her gaze started dwelling on the small miracles instead of the large imperfections. This shift in her internal perception began to reflect in her external actions. She became a more intuitive gardener. Instead of following a rigid watering schedule, she learned to feel the soil's thirst. Instead of spraying poison indiscriminately, she learned to encourage the presence of ladybugs to eat the aphids. She stopped fighting her garden and started collaborating with it. The constant murmur of complaint in her mind was gradually replaced by a different, softer, deeper murmur, the murmur of gratitude, and the garden responded. As if it could sense the change in its caretaker's energy, it began to transform. The colors seemed more vibrant, the plants more robust. Life returned in ways she had never encouraged: butterflies, hummingbirds, the constant hum of life. Her garden finally found its soul, and Inez, kneeling on the ground with dirty hands and a genuine smile on her face for the first time in years, understood that the secret to a flourishing garden and a flourishing life was not perfection, but appreciation. Key teaching: the frequency of gratitude. Inez's story reveals one of the deepest and most often misunderstood truths about the nature of reality. We tend to treat gratitude as a polite transaction. It is the thank you we say after we are given a gift, after something good happens. We see it as the end point of a positive experience, but this view is limited. Gratitude is not a response to abundance. It is the cause of the experience of abundance. It is an active state of consciousness, an energetic frequency that we choose to live in. Imagine your mind is like an incredibly powerful search engine. The program it runs by default is determined by your habitual focus. If your focus, like Inez's initially, is complaint, criticism, and worry, you have programmed your mind to actively search for problems. It will scan your reality and present you with a detailed report of everything that is wrong. The traffic, the insensitive comment from a colleague, the stain on your shirt, the extra pound. Your brain, in its efficiency, will show you a world that confirms your belief that things are difficult and imperfect. The practice of gratitude is the conscious act of reprogramming this search engine. When you deliberately choose to look for things to be thankful for, you are giving your brain a new directive. You are telling it, search for evidence of beauty, search for evidence of goodness, search for evidence of grace, and your mind obediently will begin to filter reality differently. You will start noticing the kindness of the stranger who held the door for you, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the miracle of having potable water at the turn of a tap. The external world hasn't changed, but the world you experience has been completely transformed because you have changed the filter through which you perceive it. But the gratitude the river teaches us is even deeper. It is not simply a positive thought that ignores the negative. It is an appreciation for the entirety of the journey, with its sunny days and its unexpected frosts. It is the ability, like Silas, to thank the frost for the lesson about the root's resilience. It is a gratitude that embraces the paradox. It means being grateful for the failure, not because we enjoy the pain of failing, but for the invaluable lesson in humility and the opportunity to start again with more wisdom. It means being grateful for a broken heart, not because the loss doesn't hurt, but for the depth of empathy and compassion it excavates in our soul. It means being grateful for endings, because without them, there would be no space for new beginnings. This is mature gratitude, the kind that does not depend on life being easy or comfortable. It is a deep trust that every element of the journey, even the most painful, is contributing to our growth, polishing our rough edges just as the river polishes the stones. This practice is the direct antidote to the scarcity mindset that permeates our culture. We are bombarded by messages telling us we are not enough, that we don't have enough. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough time. You're not successful enough. The scarcity mindset is a bottomless pit. Gratitude is the ladder out of it. It is the radical act of declaring, what I have here and now is enough. I, here and now, am enough. It is recognizing the deep abundance that already surrounds us, the miracle of a body that breathes on its own, the network of life that sustains us, the presence of at least one person who cares about us. When we dwell in this recognition, our internal operating system shifts from the panic of lack to the peace of sufficiency. And from that place of fullness, we attract, create, and recognize more fullness. Understanding the importance of gratitude is one step. But feeling it in every cell of our being is what truly transforms us. I invite you now to a practice to cultivate this inner murmur, to learn to converse with your life in the language of thanksgiving. The river practice, watering your inner garden, find your place of stillness. Sit or lie down in a way that allows you to fully relax. Close your eyes. Begin by bringing your attention to your breath, your most faithful anchor to the present moment. Feel how each inhalation is a gift of life, a wave of energy that nourishes billions of cells without you having to do anything. And feel how each exhalation is an act of letting go, of releasing what is no longer needed. Stay with this simple miracle for a few moments, feeling a fundamental gratitude for the simple fact of being alive, here and now. Now, I invite you to visualize your life as a garden. Your inner garden, walk its paths. There may be areas you love, full of vibrant flowers and abundant fruit, and there may be other areas you dislike, with weeds, dry patches, or plants that have been damaged by a frost. For a moment, simply observe your garden as it is, with acceptance. Now I will guide you to walk through this garden with the eyes of gratitude. First, go to one of those difficult areas. Perhaps it's a weedy patch, representing a current challenge in your life. Instead of feeling the urge to angrily pull them out, stop. Observe their tenacity, and silently or aloud if you prefer, find one thing to thank them for. Perhaps it's, "Thank you, challenge, for showing me how strong I can be," or "Thank you for the creativity you are forcing me to find." Now, walk toward a place where a plant has been damaged by a frost, a memory of a failure or a painful loss. Instead of looking away, get closer. Touch the wilted leaves in your mind and look for the hidden gift. Perhaps you can whisper, "Thank you, mistake, for the lesson in humility you taught me." Or, "Thank you, broken heart, for opening me to a compassion I did not know." You don't have to force the feeling. The simple act of seeking the gift begins to change your relationship with the pain. Having honored the difficult parts of your garden, now shift your focus. Begin to walk and practice the art of micro-gratitude. Look down from the large flowers and search for the small miracles. Find a single perfectly formed leaf and thank its symmetry. Observe an ant carrying a load and thank its diligence. Feel the texture of the soil under your imaginary feet and thank its capacity to nourish life. Expand this gratitude. Thank the rain that has nourished your garden and the sun that has warmed it. Thank the air that allows your plants to breathe. Feel how your garden is not an isolated entity, but part of a vast, supporting network of life. Finally, stand in the center of your garden. Feel how all of it, with its flowers and its weeds, its successes and its failures, its areas of light and shadow, is bathed in a warm, golden light of gratitude. This light does not judge. It does not prefer one part over another. It simply embraces everything as part of the complex, perfect beauty of your journey. Feel this murmur of gratitude vibrating in every cell of your being. Stay with this feeling for as long as you need. When you are ready, take a deep breath, bringing that golden light into your heart. And as you exhale, slowly open your eyes. You have practiced the watering of your soul. You have learned that gratitude is the most fertile soil in which a life of true and vibrant abundance can grow. Chapter 6. The Waterfalls of Purpose, Inspired Action. We live in a world that worships effort. We have been taught to equate movement with progress, busyness with importance, and exhaustion with virtue. We have built a culture that glorifies the struggle, the hustle, the act of constantly pushing a heavy rock uphill, believing that the mountain peak, the reward, is only reached through incessant tension and sheer willpower. And so we spend our days in a state of forced action. We act because we should. We should be more productive. We should advance in our career. We should meet the expectations that others, or we ourselves, have placed on our shoulders. This forced action has an unmistakable texture. It feels like swimming against the current. It requires an enormous expenditure of energy to achieve minimal progress. It is tainted by procrastination, by a dull dread we feel on Sunday afternoon thinking about the week ahead. It's the sensation of waging an internal battle to compel ourselves to do something that a deep part of us resists. And most exhausting of all, even when we achieve success through this type of action, the victory often feels hollow, empty. We reach the goal only to realize the ladder was leaned against the wrong wall, and we find ourselves at the top, more tired and lost than when we started. But there is another way to act. A way that doesn't feel like pushing, but like being carried by a powerful, joyful current. It is an action that is not born from the head and the shoulds, but one that springs from the center of our being. It is inspired action. Imagine for a moment the course of a great river. For most of its journey, it flows with an almost lazy calm through valleys and plains. It doesn't seem to be making a great effort. It simply follows its course, meandering, exploring, collecting water from hundreds of small tributaries. In this phase, the river is in a process of silent accumulation. It is gathering potential, gaining volume and mass without an evident display of power. But when this river, after its long, patient journey, reaches the edge of a cliff, a transformation occurs. All that accumulated energy is released in an instant, in a thundering, magnificent waterfall. The waterfall does not strive to fall. Its descent is the inevitable natural expression of the entire journey that preceded it. Its power is not born of struggle, but of alignment and release. This is exactly how inspired action works. It is not a bolt of motivation falling from the sky without warning. It is the natural result of a preceding phase, often long and underestimated, the phase of accumulation. It is the waterfall that forms only after our inner river has had time to flow, explore and gather its own water. Forced action, the kind that leaves us exhausted, is the attempt to create a waterfall where no water has accumulated. It is standing at the edge of a dry riverbed and trying to summon a torrent by sheer willpower. That's why it feels so artificial, so draining. We are trying to give something we don't have, to manifest an energy that has not yet gathered within us. We have become addicted to the climax of the waterfall without honoring the slow, winding river journey that makes it possible. So, what does this accumulation phase look like? It often looks nothing like work as we know it. It is subtle, curious, and sometimes seems unproductive to the external observer, and even to our own critical mind. The first current of this phase is following our genuine curiosity. It is allowing ourselves to read that book on a subject that has nothing to do with our career. It is watching that documentary about the life of bees simply because we are intrigued. It is having that long, seemingly purposeless conversation with someone who fascinates us. Every time we follow a thread of authentic interest, however small or irrelevant it may seem, we are adding a tributary to our inner river. We are nurturing our potential without the pressure that it must serve a purpose. Society pressures us for every activity to have a measurable return on investment. But the soul operates with a different economy. The soul's currency is enthusiasm, and its investment always bears fruit, though often in unexpected ways and at a future time. The second current is the collection of experiences. Every trip, every new hobby, every course we take, every relationship we cultivate, even every failure and every broken heart, is water for our river. Forced action often stems from fear and limited knowledge. We try to control outcomes because we operate from what we already know. Inspired action, however, is born from a rich well of diverse experiences. The more we have lived, the more perspectives we have gained, the more emotional and practical data points we have collected in our subconscious. A failure in an old project can become the wisdom that guides us in a new one. A skill learned in a seemingly useless hobby can be the key piece that solves a complex problem in our work years later. The accumulation phase asks us to live fully, with open arms, trusting that every experience, pleasurable or painful, is filling our inner reservoir. The third current is the silent dedication to a skill or craft. It is deliberate practice, the act of getting better at something for the simple pleasure of mastery. It is the musician practicing their scales, the writer filling their journals, the programmer coding personal projects at night. In the accumulation phase, this practice is not driven by the need for recognition or financial reward. It is driven by an intrinsic love for the process. It is in this pressure-free dedication that true skill is forged, and it is this skill that will later become the channel through which the energy of the waterfall can flow with power and precision. When we honor this accumulation phase, when we follow our curiosity, gather experiences, and hone our skills without the tyranny of an immediate result, something magical begins to happen. The different tributaries of our interest and experience begin to converge. We start to see patterns, to connect ideas that previously seemed unrelated. A central theme begins to emerge, not as a logical decision, but as a gravitational field that starts attracting more of our attention and energy. This is the moment when the river begins to sense the pull of the precipice. It hasn't reached the waterfall yet, but its direction becomes clearer, its current more decisive. And then the moment arrives. It might be triggered by a crisis, an opportunity, or simply an internal feeling that now is the time. The river of our accumulated potential reaches the edge, and inspired action is unleashed. The feeling of inspired action is unmistakable and is the polar opposite of forced action. It doesn't feel like a push. It feels like a pull. It is as if a force greater than ourselves is moving through us. Time seems to distort. Hours pass as if they were minutes. We enter a state of flow, where our skill and the challenge are in perfect balance. Fear and self-criticism fade into the background, replaced by a joyful concentration. We are not exhausted by the action. We are energized by it. It's as if, instead of spending our own energy, we have connected to a much larger power source. The results produced from inspired action often far exceed what our logical mind could have planned, because they are not limited by our personal will. They are the result of an alignment with the greater current of life. The key, and perhaps the greatest challenge in our impatient world, is learning to trust the rhythm of this process. We cannot force accumulation. We cannot force the river to flow faster. Trying to do so is to fall back into the trap of forced action. We must have the faith and patience to remain in the accumulation phase for as long as necessary, trusting that we are gathering the water that will feed our future waterfall. We must learn to value the periods of apparent inactivity, of aimless exploration, of learning for the sheer joy of learning. It is these periods that give our action its future power and authenticity. Inspired action asks us to change our fundamental question. Instead of asking, what should I be doing? We begin to ask, what feels alive in me right now? Instead of, what's the 5-year plan? We ask, what is the very next step that feels most energized and curious? By following this internal compass of vitality, we ensure we are always adding water to our river, instead of trying to turn a mill wheel with a dry bed. Purpose is not a destination we find. It is a waterfall we create through the patient, joyful accumulation of who we are. Understanding the difference between these two forms of action is liberating. It gives us permission to drop the burden of constant struggle and to honor the natural rhythms of our own energy. Now I invite you to take this understanding into your own experience, to become a cartographer of your own inner river, so you can distinguish where your energy flows with ease and where it stagnates in struggle. The river practice. Mapping the flow of energy. Find a comfortable position and take paper and pencil if you wish, or simply prepare for a deep and honest reflection. Close your eyes for a moment and take 3 slow, deep breaths, fully arriving in the present moment. First, let's identify the areas of forced action, the places where you try to push the rock uphill. Think about your life right now, your job, your relationships, your personal projects, your daily routines. Ask yourself these questions kindly and without judgment. What activities in my life fill me with a sense of heaviness or dread before I start them? What are the tasks I constantly postpone? In what areas do I feel I am acting primarily out of a sense of should, out of guilt, or the pressure of external expectations? What conversations or interactions leave me feeling exhausted and empty? Simply observe the answers that arise. You don't have to do anything with them yet. The simple act of naming them, of bringing them to consciousness, already reduces their power. These are the areas where your inner river is encountering a dam of resistance. Now, let's change the focus. We are going to look for the tributaries, the currents of natural energy that are already flowing within you. We are going to identify the sources of your future waterfall. Ask yourself these questions and pay attention not only to the mental answers but to the resonance in your body, to any feeling of lightness or expansion. What topics could you read or talk about for hours without tiring? What activities make you lose track of time? If you had a completely free afternoon, with no obligations, what would you naturally be drawn to do without anyone asking you? What kind of problems do you love to solve, not because you have to, but because of the challenge and satisfaction it gives you? What conversations leave you feeling more energized than you were before? What skills or talents, however small, do you enjoy practicing for the simple pleasure of it? Take your time. Jot down or simply reflect on these currents of natural energy. These are not trivialities. They are the most important clues your soul is giving you. They are your tributaries. They are the water that is filling your reservoir. Now look at the answers. Do you see any patterns? Is there a theme or quality that connects several of these currents? Do not force a connection if you don't see one. Sometimes tributaries flow separately for a long time, but sometimes, by observing them together, we begin to see the shape of a larger river. Perhaps your love for gardening, your deep conversations with friends, and your fascination with stories of resilience are converging toward a purpose related to nurturing and growth. Perhaps your ability to organize information, your pleasure in technology, and your desire to help others are pointing toward a waterfall of creating a useful tool or system. The goal of this reflection is not to define your purpose in a single sentence, but to begin to feel the direction in which your energy already wants to flow. To conclude this practice, let's turn awareness into action, but an inspired action, not a forced one. Choose only one of your tributaries, one of those activities or curiosities that fill you with energy, and commit to taking an incredibly small step to honor that current in the next 24 hours. If it was reading about a topic, spend 15 minutes reading an article about it. If it was a creative hobby, take out your materials and play with them for 10 minutes, without any expectation of creating a masterpiece. If it was connecting with inspiring people, send a short message to a friend who nourishes you. This is not a step to be productive. It is a sacred act of adding a drop of water to your river. It is a message to yourself and the universe that you are listening, that you are willing to value the slow, joyful journey of accumulation. By taking these small, inspired steps, day after day, you are not only filling your river, but you are building a life of authenticity and flow, moving closer and closer to the edge of your own magnificent waterfall. Chapter 7. The Dance of the Pebbles, Co-Creation and Relationships. We approach human relationships with an invisible architecture in mind. We carry with us a detailed, often unconscious blueprint for how things should be. We have a list of requirements for the ideal partner, an unwritten instruction manual for our friends, an organizational chart of expectations for our family, and a code of conduct for our colleagues. We approach others not as explorers discovering a new landscape, but as architects trying to build a predefined structure on foreign terrain. We want others to be the perfect bricks for our tower, to fit neatly into the spaces we have designed for them, and we dedicate an astonishing amount of our vital energy to trying to make this happen, chiseling the edges of others, filling their cracks with our own needs, and becoming profoundly frustrated when their sovereign nature refuses to conform to our blueprint. This architectural approach to relationships is doomed to suffering. Because people are not inert bricks. They are living rivers, constantly changing landscapes, and trying to build a static structure with dynamic elements is a recipe for collapse and disillusionment. We view conflict as a construction error, a sign that the project is failing. We fear disagreement because it threatens the stability of our fragile tower. We long for predictability, the security of knowing that the person we love today will be exactly the same tomorrow, and that their place in our life will remain unchanged. But this search for static security is the antithesis of life itself, which is flow, change, and interaction. I propose a different metaphor, one that frees us from the burden of being architects and invites us to become dancers. Imagine that each of us is a pebble in the bed of a great river. Initially, when we fall from the mountain, we are full of sharp edges. Our ego, our insecurities, our rigid beliefs, our unhealed traumas. The river is life, the current of shared experience. And relationships are the inevitable dance that occurs when the current causes us to roll and collide with one another. From the architect's perspective, these collisions are a disaster. They are the moments when our towers sway. But from the river's perspective, these collisions are the very mechanism of beauty and transformation. It is in that friction, in that sometimes uncomfortable and abrasive contact, that our sharp edges get polished. It is in rubbing against another's perspective that our most rigid beliefs soften. It is in the act of making space for another pebble's movement that our ego learns to be more flexible. Conflict, viewed this way, ceases to be a sign of failure and becomes the soul's workshop. We are not here to remain static in a tower, but to dance in the river, allowing life and others to polish us until the smoothness and shine beneath our roughness are revealed. This perspective changes everything. It frees us from the impossible task of controlling others and returns to us the much more significant task of being aware of our own dance. This leads us to a fundamental understanding. In every significant relationship, there are not two entities but three. There is you, there is the other person, and there is the relationship itself, the river flowing between you. The architect mindset focuses obsessively on the other bricks, trying to change them. The dancer mindset focuses on the quality of the river's water. Caring for the river means cultivating communication, trust, appreciation, and mutual respect. It means understanding that the health of the relationship is a shared responsibility, and that our primary contribution is to ensure that the water we contribute to that current is as clean and clear as possible. When conflict arises, instead of asking, "What is wrong with you?" the question becomes, "What is polluting the river flowing between us?" Is it an uncommunicated expectation? An unexpressed fear? An old wound that has been reopened? This change of focus depersonalizes the conflict and turns it into a shared problem to solve together, rather than a battle to win or lose. Embracing the dance of the pebbles also means transforming our relationship with conflict. We must distinguish between destructive conflict and creative friction. Destructive conflict is the attempt to break the other pebble. It is criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. These are interactions where the goal is to prove one is right and the other is wrong. A battle of egos that only creates more sharp edges and cracks in the relationship. Creative friction, on the other hand, is mutual polishing. It happens when we approach disagreement with the intention not to win, but to understand. It requires a fundamental skill that is the foundation of all conscious relationship. Listening. Not listening to prepare our rebuttal, but listening to understand the other person's inner landscape. It requires the courage to approach conflict with curiosity instead of judgment. What life experience has led you to see things this way, so different from mine? This question opens the door to connection, while accusation slams it shut. Creative friction also asks us to own our own sharp edges. Instead of saying, "You always make me feel," as it involves saying, "When this happens, the story I tell myself is, and I feel." It is the act of taking responsibility for our own shape, allowing the other person to do the same. When we cultivate this type of interaction, the results are miraculous. Relationships become a field of co-creation. The most beautiful outcomes of a deep connection are rarely the ones we planned. They are the emergent properties of the dance. It's the business idea that surfaces during a casual conversation, the level of intimacy reached after navigating a crisis together. The creative project born from the merging of two unique perspectives. Co-creation is the melody the pebbles compose while dancing in the river. For this to happen, we must release our attachment to a predictable outcome. We must trust that the very process of honest and respectful interaction will lead us to a richer, more interesting place than any destination our solitary mind could have designed. This dance also implies a natural rhythm of closeness and distance. A healthy river does not always flow at the same speed. It has rapids and it has backwaters. Similarly, a healthy relationship does not exist in a state of constant fusion. The architect mindset fears distance, seeing it as a crack in the structure, a threat to stability. The dancer mindset understands that individual space is just as vital as time together. It is in the distance, in the time we spend as individual pebbles, that we process our experiences, cultivate our own interests, and continue our personal growth. This individual growth is what then enriches the dance when we meet again. Allowing space is an act of trust. It is the understanding that the connection is not based on constant presence, but on a resonant commitment that survives and even strengthens with distance. At the heart of this dance is the principle of acceptance, the birth of our inner river. It is the ability to see the other pebble in all their complexity, with their smooth, shiny parts, and with their still sharp, unpolished edges. It is the abandonment of the project of improving or fixing the other, and the embracing of the person they are, here and now. This acceptance is not passive. It is the fertile ground upon which true transformation can occur, because it is only when we feel fundamentally accepted that we have the security to show our roughest parts, and allow the current of the relationship to gently polish them. Without acceptance, we spend our lives hiding our edges, and the dance becomes a fearful performance instead of an authentic interaction. This perspective invites us to a more courageous, more fluid, and ultimately more real way of loving and relating. It asks us to let go of the blueprint and start feeling the music, to stop trying to build towers and dare to be polished by the current. Understanding this vision of relationships can be a profound relief. It frees us from an immense burden. To take this idea from the intellect to the heart and into action, I now invite you to a practice of conscious perception. The river practice. Choosing your dance, find your space of stillness. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and take a few deep breaths to anchor yourself in the present. Now I ask you to bring a specific relationship in your life to mind. It doesn't have to be the most important or the most difficult one, just a connection to which you would like to bring more awareness and flow. It could be with your partner, a family member, a close friend, or a work colleague. Visualize this person in front of you with kindness and without judgment. First, let's observe the tower of expectations. With honesty and self-compassion, ask yourself, what is the blueprint I have designed for this person and for this relationship? What rigid expectations have I placed on them? Do I expect them to always be available, to think as I do, to satisfy certain emotional needs, to behave in a predictable way? Do not judge yourself for these expectations. We all have them. The goal is simply to make them conscious. Observe where you feel frustration, when this person deviates from your blueprint. These are the points where your tower is swaying. Simply notice them. Now let's identify the sharp edges. Think of a recent interaction with this person that was difficult or created friction. Recreate the scene in your mind for a moment and ask yourself, what was my sharp edge in that dance? Was it my need to be right, my fear of being vulnerable, my tendency to assume the worst, my difficulty truly listening? Own your part of the friction. Now with empathy, try to perceive what the other person's sharp edge might have been. Perhaps their fear of being controlled, their insecurity, a past wound that was triggered. Observe how two sharp edges collided in the current. Next, shift your focus. Stop looking at the individual pebbles and start observing the river flowing between you. Visualize the space that connects you as a current of water. How is the water today? Is it clear, vibrant, and flowing freely? Or is it a bit murky, stagnant, or full of obstacles? Without blaming anyone, simply observe the quality of the relationship's energy. Now ask yourself, what small thing could I do to bring clean water to this river? It is not about changing the other person. It is about your own contribution. Could it be an unexpressed word of appreciation? A selfless act of service? A moment of attentive listening without interrupting? offering the benefit of the doubt. Choose one small contribution. Finally, let's set an intention for your next dance with this person. This intention will not be about the outcome, nor about getting what you want. It will be about the quality of your own movement. Based on what you have reflected on, choose a simple intention. It could be, in our next conversation, my intention is to listen with curiosity, or my intention is to be aware of my need to be right and soften that edge. Or my intention is to remember that we are both pebbles in the same river, or my intention is to contribute a drop of appreciation to the river that unites us. Hold this intention in your heart for a moment. Feel what it feels like in your body. Lighter, more spacious, more open. This is the stance of the dancer. Take one last deep breath. As you exhale, let go of the image of the person and the relationship, and return to the sensation of your own being. When you are ready, open your eyes. You have planted a seed of awareness. You cannot control the river or the other pebble, but you can always choose the quality of your own dance. Chapter 8. The Bridge of Trust, Letting Go of Control. There is an impulse that resides deep within our psyche, an instinct so fundamental that we often confuse it with our very identity. It is the impulse to control. It is born from an ancient place, from the need to predict the storm, secure the harvest, and protect the tribe from the predator. In a world of physical dangers, control was synonymous with survival. But in the complex landscape of our modern life, this instinct, once our greatest ally, has become the source of our deepest anxiety. We live in the age of illusory control. We try to manage every variable, optimize every moment, and plan for every contingency. We replay past conversations in our minds, editing our words as if we could rewrite history. We create detailed, rigid 5-year plans that fill us more with stress over their potential failure than with inspiration over their promise. We try with exhausting subtlety to manage the emotions and decisions of the people we love, believing we know what is best for them, and we compulsively check our phones, seeking certainty in the latest update on the weather, the news, social media, in a desperate attempt to eliminate the uncertainty of the next second. This need for control is like trying to build an earth dam with your bare hands to stop the flow of a powerful river. It is an unending, exhausting task. Every time we manage to contain a small leak, 3 more appear elsewhere. We spend our days running back and forth across our precarious dam, patching holes, reinforcing walls, in a state of constant vigilance. We live tense with contracted muscles and a mind always on alert, calculating the next risk. And we wonder why we are so tired. We are tired because we are waging an impossible war against the fundamental nature of life itself, which is change, flow, and the unpredictable. This chapter is not about how to build a better dam. It is about the radical and liberating act of stopping construction altogether and, instead, learning to build a bridge. To understand how to let go of control, we must first look honestly at why we cling to it so tenaciously. At its root, the need for control is a manifestation of fear, primarily the fear of uncertainty. Our brain is a pattern recognition machine designed to create order out of chaos. The unknown registers in our nervous system as a potential threat. That is why we crave certainty. Control is the sedative we use to calm our anxiety about a future that is, by definition, uncertain. We prefer a mediocre plan that gives us a false sense of security over the possibility of a brilliant outcome that requires us to walk a distance blindly. Secondly, we cling to control out of fear of vulnerability. Being out of control is admitting that we can be hurt, that we can fail, that we can lose what we love. It is recognizing our own fragility in the grand scheme of things. So we build walls of control around ourselves. We control our image so as not to be judged. We control our emotions so as not to appear weak. We control our interactions to avoid rejection. Each of these acts of control is an attempt to shield our heart. But what it actually does is confine it to a prison that isolates us from authentic connection and the fullness of the human experience, which is inherently vulnerable. Finally, control is our ego's favorite project. The ego is that part of us that needs to feel separate, special, and in charge. It wants to be the author of our story, the CEO of our life. Letting go of control feels to the ego like an abdication, a defeat. It threatens its very existence. That is why it often resists the idea of surrender with incredible force, whispering to us that if we let go of the reins, everything will collapse. The price of this addiction is immense. Constant vigilance leads to mental exhaustion and decision fatigue. Living in a state of perpetual alertness overloads our nervous system, manifesting as anxiety, insomnia, and a host of stress-related physical ailments. Furthermore, control is the enemy of creativity and intuition. Creativity is born in the space of the unknown, in the willingness to play without a guaranteed outcome. Intuition, our echo of the mountain, is a whisper that we can only hear in stillness, not in the noise of a mind that constantly plans and calculates. By trying to control every variable, we close the door to serendipity, to happy coincidence, to the magical solutions that often arise when we stop forcing a problem. And, as we saw in the previous chapter, in our relationships, control is a poison that erodes trust and breeds resentment. The alternative to this exhausting struggle is not passivity or apathy. The alternative is trust. But we must redefine what we mean by trust. Trust is not a naive belief that everything will always turn out the way we want. It is not blind faith that we will never experience pain or loss. That kind of trust is fragile and breaks at the first contact with harsh reality. The trust we speak of is much more robust and profound. It is made up of two fundamental elements. The first is trust in the flow of life itself. It is the fundamental belief felt in the bones that the universe is not a chaotic, hostile place, but an intelligent and fundamentally supportive system. It is understanding that the river, with all its unexpected meanders, its turbulent rapids and its stretches of calm, is, in the final analysis, flowing toward the vast ocean. It means trusting that even the detours and obstacles, which from our limited perspective seem like mistakes or tragedies, are often necessary redirections that lead us to a growth or a destination we could not have foreseen. The second component, and the most crucial, is trust in ourselves. This is the true key to letting go of control. It's not so much about trusting that the river will always be calm. It is about trusting our own ability to navigate the river, whatever its state. It is trust in our resilience, in the stones we have already polished within us. It is knowing that we have survived all our worst days so far. It is trust in our creativity to find solutions, in our strength to endure difficulties, and in our capacity to learn and grow from every experience. When you trust deeply in your own ability to handle whatever life presents, you stop needing to control life itself. The need to control the external decreases in direct proportion to the increase in trust in your internal self. This is where the bridge metaphor becomes fully meaningful. The control mindset tries to build a bridge that is like a solid wall, a dike that attempts to stop the river's force. It seems strong, but by opposing total resistance, it creates unbearable pressure on itself. When the inevitable surge comes, a crisis, a loss, an unexpected change, the pressure is too much and the rigid structure breaks and crumbles. The trust mindset, however, builds a different bridge. The strength of this bridge resides in two principles. First, in incredibly deep foundations, anchored in the bedrock beneath the riverbed. These foundations are our self-trust, our core values, our integrated resilience. They are the part of us that remains firm and immovable. Second, its strength lies in an open and flexible design, like that of an arched bridge. It does not try to stop the water. It is designed for the river to flow through it. It allows the powerful currents of life, intense emotions, and unexpected events to pass through our structure without destroying it. This bridge does not fight the river. It coexists with it in a dance of stability and flow. To be this bridge is the goal. Cultivating this kind of trust is a practice, not a one-time decision. It's like strengthening a muscle that has atrophied from lack of use. We start small. We practice letting go of control in low-stakes situations. We let a friend choose the restaurant without checking the reviews online. We take a different route to work, just to see what happens. We say, "I don't know," in a conversation, instead of feeling the need to always have an answer. Each of these small releases is an act of training. One of the most powerful practices for dissolving control is to focus our attention on the present. Control is an activity obsessed with the future. It feeds on anxiety about what could happen. By deliberately bringing our awareness to the here and now, to the feeling of our breath, the sound of rain on the window, the taste of our food, we cut the fuel from the control machinery. In the present moment, there is rarely a crisis. The crisis almost always resides in our projections about a future that does not exist. And finally, we cultivate trust by learning to surrender the how. We can have a clear intention, a destination in mind, the place where we want our river to take us. That is our waterfall of purpose. But we must learn to release our attachment to the exact route to get there. We set the what and the why, but we surrender the how to the wisdom of the river. Often, life has a more creative, efficient, and beautiful path for us than our logical mind could ever conceive. The surrender of the how is an act of deep trust, a declaration that we are open to collaboration with an intelligence greater than our own. Trust, like a muscle, strengthens with use. To begin exercising it and directly experience the liberation that letting go brings, I invite you to a simple yet profound practice: the open hand ritual. The river practice. The open hand. Ritual: find your place of stillness where you can sit undisturbed for a few minutes. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths to center yourself. Now, bring to mind a specific situation in your life where you feel you are holding on tightly, an area where your need for control is particularly intense. It could be the outcome of a project, another person's decision, a worry about your health or finances. Choose only one thing. Visualize it clearly in your mind. Next, I invite you to materialize this situation in your hand. Imagine placing it in the palm of your dominant hand, and then, slowly and deliberately, closing your fist around it. Clench your fist tightly. Feel the muscles in your fingers, your hand, and your forearm tense up. Feel that tension travel up your arm to your shoulder, your neck, your jaw. Stay with this sensation for a moment. This is the physical cost of your need to control. This is the energy you spend every day in this silent struggle. Now we will begin the process of letting go. Do not do it all at once. Do it with conscious, deliberate intention, finger by finger. Begin by easing the pressure on your little finger, allowing it to slightly separate from your palm. Then the ring finger. Feel the release of tension as it unfolds. Continue with the middle finger, then the index finger. Finally, release the thumb from its grip. Your hand is now open, palm up. Visualize the situation you were controlling, now resting gently in your open palm. You are no longer imprisoning it. You are holding it. You are offering it to the world. Imagine a current of light, the river of life, flowing and gently carrying it away from your hand. You are not throwing it away. You are releasing it into a current of trust. As you watch it float and drift away, repeat these words internally like a mantra for your soul. I set my purest intention for the good of all involved. And now, I release the outcome. I trust the flow. Repeat it several times, allowing each word to resonate in your being. I release the outcome. I trust the flow. When the visualization has faded, keep your attention on your now open hand. What do you feel? Notice the lightness, the absence of tension. Feel the warmth, the blood flow returning. Feel the peace that resides in an open hand. A closed hand can grasp and control, but it cannot receive anything. An open hand is a gesture of trust, and it is in this openness that we can receive the unexpected solutions, the help, and the grace that life is always waiting to offer us. Take one last deep breath, inhaling the feeling of this peace and openness. As you exhale, slowly open your eyes. You have practiced the art of building a bridge. You carry with you not the tension of the closed fist, but the serene strength of the open hand. Remember this feeling. You can return to it at any point in the day, simply by opening your hands and breathing. True power lies not in the force with which you hold on, but in the grace with which you learn to let go. Chapter 9. The Mirror of the Water, Environmental Consciousness. We live with a strange amnesia, a fundamental dissociation that leads us to believe that our inner world, our thoughts, emotions, and spiritual state exists in a bubble. Separate from the external world we inhabit, we act as if our mind were a sealed fortress, immune to the clutter on our desk, the cacophony of our phone notifications, or the subtle yet palpable energy of the people with whom we share a room. We strive to find inner peace through meditation and introspection, while ignoring the chaos that reigns in our physical, social, and digital spaces. It's like trying to maintain a small pond of perfectly still, crystal-clear water in the middle of a hurricane. I invite you to abandon this illusion. Your environment is not a passive backdrop to your life. It is the most honest mirror you will ever find. What you see around you every day is a direct, unfiltered reflection of your inner landscape. The surface of a calm river perfectly reflects the sky, the clouds, and the trees on the bank. In the same way, your external reality reflects the state of your consciousness with astonishing precision. Understanding and working with this law of reflection is one of the most powerful and often underestimated practices on the path of personal growth. It's not about controlling the world, but about understanding the dance of correspondence between who you are inside and what you experience outside. This dance of reflection manifests in a constant feedback loop. On one hand, our inner state actively shapes the environment we inhabit. We are the projectors. If our internal world is full of chaotic thoughts, postponed decisions, and a lack of clarity about what we value, our physical space often becomes a map of that disorder. The pile of unopened mail by the entrance is not just mail. It is the reflection of avoidance. The clothes piled on a chair are not just clothes. They are the reflection of fatigue and lack of energy. The desk overflowing with papers is not just clutter. It is the reflection of an overwhelmed mind that doesn't know where to start. Every item in our home that is broken, that we dislike, or that we no longer use but tolerate day after day, is a small energy leak. These are tolerations that subconsciously send us a constant message of mediocrity and resignation. By tolerating disorder or dysfunction in our environment, we are practicing the tolerance of dysfunction in our own life. Conversely, the act of creating a physical space that is orderly, functional, and beautiful is not a triviality. It is a powerful declaration of self-respect. It is saying to the universe and to ourselves, I am worthy of an environment that supports and nourishes me. I value clarity, peace, and harmony, both inside and outside myself. When we clean our space, we are not just moving dust. We are moving stagnant energy, creating a fertile vacuum for new opportunities and new clarity to enter our life. This mirror principle extends even more strongly to our social environment. The people we choose to surround ourselves with are perhaps the most revealing reflection of our inner state. We operate in a field of energetic resonance. Unconsciously, we attract and are attracted to people who vibrate at a similar frequency to our own. If our inner circle is predominantly made up of cynical, complaining, or critical people, it is an invitation to look honestly at the cynicism, complaint, or self-criticism we harbor within ourselves. If, on the contrary, we find ourselves surrounded by people who are inspiring, supportive, and challenge us to grow, it is a reflection that we have cultivated those same qualities within and value their expansion. Take an honest inventory of your closest relationships. Do you feel energized or drained after spending time with them? Do you feel seen and celebrated for who you are? Or do you feel like you have to shrink or wear a mask to fit in? The answers to these questions are not a judgment on those people, but a diagnosis of your own energy and self-esteem at this moment. We often maintain relationships that no longer serve us out of loyalty, fear of loneliness, or simple inertia, without realizing that this social environment is reinforcing the limitations we claim we want to overcome. In our modern world, a third mirror has emerged, one we hold in our hands for hours every day, our digital environment. Your phone's home screen, the apps on the first page, the accounts you follow on social media, the podcasts you listen to, and the newsletters you subscribe to all form an ecosystem of information that is actively shaping your thoughts and mood. This mirror is relentless. Is your feed a torrent of alarming news, social comparisons that make you feel inadequate, and controversies designed to outrage you? If so, you are immersing your consciousness in a river of anxiety and conflict, and it's no surprise that you feel anxious and conflicted. Or conversely, have you cultivated a digital garden that offers you inspiration, knowledge, authentic connection, and beauty? Curating our digital environment is no longer a luxury. It is an essential survival skill for maintaining mental clarity and inner peace in the 21st century. But the feedback loop does not travel in only one direction. Not only do we project our inner self outward, we also absorb our exterior inward. We are energetic sponges, constantly influenced by the world around us, whether we acknowledge it or not. The influence of our physical space is profound. Step into a Gothic cathedral, and you will feel a sense of awe and reverence. Step into a Japanese Zen garden, and you will feel an almost instant calm. Walk into a chaotic, vibrant artist's studio, and you might feel a spark of creative energy. Spaces have an atmosphere, a frequency, that our nervous system perceives and responds to. We can use this principle deliberately in our own homes. The simple introduction of natural light, the use of colors that calm or inspire us, the incorporation of natural elements like plants or wood, and the elimination of visual clutter can have a measurable impact on our stress levels and our ability to concentrate. Cleaning and tidying our home is not just a household chore. It is a form of energetic hygiene. It is like cleaning the camera lens through which we experience the world. A clean, harmonious space doesn't force us to be peaceful, but it creates the optimal conditions for inner peace to flourish more easily. In the same way, the energy of our social environment constantly molds us through the phenomenon of emotional contagion. Our brains are equipped with mirror neurons, which cause us to unconsciously feel the emotional states of those around us. If you spend enough time with a chronically anxious person, it is very likely that your own nervous system will begin to reflect that state of alert. If you surround yourself with enthusiastic and optimistic people, their energy is literally contagious. This does not mean we should abandon our friends or family when they are going through a difficult time. It means we must be conscious of this energetic exchange. It implies the need to cultivate healthy boundaries, to learn to have compassion for another's suffering without drowning in it. And above all, it implies the responsibility to actively seek the company of people whose energy nourishes and elevates us, so that we can have a surplus to offer to others. Choosing wisely who we spend our time with is one of the most important decisions we can make for our mental and spiritual health. Finally, the influence of our digital information diet is immense. Our primitive brain, designed to react to immediate threats, does not distinguish well between a news story about a catastrophe on the other side of the world and a real danger in front of us. Constant exposure to a negative news cycle puts our nervous system in a chronic state of low-grade fight or flight. Comparison culture on social media activates our deepest insecurities and can lead to depression and anxiety. Constant notifications fragment our attention, weakening our capacity for deep thought and sustained concentration. We must start thinking of our information consumption as a diet. Just as we wouldn't eat junk food at every meal, we cannot afford to consume toxic information and expect to maintain a healthy mind. This requires conscious curation. It means making deliberate choices about whom to follow, what news to read, when to be available, and most importantly, when to completely disconnect to allow our system to reboot in silence. Understanding this dance of reflection between our inner and outer worlds gives us immense power. We are no longer passive victims of our environment. We become its conscious curators. We realize that changing our inside can change our outside, and that changing our outside is one of the fastest and most effective ways to change our inside. To begin this process, I invite you to a practice of harmonization, a deliberate act of polishing the mirror of your life. The river practice, harmonizing your environment. This practice will have 3 parts, one for each of the environments we have explored. You don't need much time, just a clear intention and the willingness to act. The physical sanctuary, cleaning the lens. First, let's attend to your physical sanctuary. Choose a small area, a very small one, of your home or workspace. Not the whole room, not even the whole desk. Choose a single drawer, a single shelf, the kitchen counter, or the passenger seat of your car. Dedicate the next 15 minutes, and only 15, to radically transforming this small space. Take everything out of it. Clean the surface thoroughly. Then, before putting each item back, hold it in your hand and ask yourself 3 questions. Is this useful? Is this beautiful? Do I love this? If the answer is no to all 3, seriously consider if it deserves to occupy a space in your life. Return only the items that pass the filter. Organize them in a way that is pleasing to your eye. When you finish, step back and observe this small oasis of order and beauty you have created. And most importantly, notice how you feel. Feel the subtle yet unmistakable sense of lightness, clarity, and accomplishment. You have polished a small part of the mirror. The social resonance circle, conscious investment. Second, let's audit your social resonance circle. Take a moment, eyes closed or open, to think about the 5 people with whom you currently exchange the most time and energy in your life. This is not about judging anyone, but about observing with honesty. For each person, ask yourself, After a typical interaction with this person, how does my energy feel? Do I feel more expanded, inspired, and vitalized? Or do I feel more contracted, drained, or heavy? Be honest with yourself. There is no need to take any drastic action. The first step is simply awareness. Today's practice is this. Based on your reflection, make the conscious decision to plan in the next week an interaction with a person on your list who consistently leaves you feeling energized. It could be a call, a coffee, a walk. It is about deliberately investing your time in the connections that recharge your spirit. The digital garden, information diet. Third, and finally, let's tend to your digital garden. Take your phone right now as part of this practice. We are going to perform 3 simple acts of digital curation. First, open your email application and unsubscribe from 5 newsletters or promotional mailing lists that you no longer read and that only clutter your inbox. Feel the lightness of releasing that future clutter. Second, open your main social network. Choose 5 accounts that, if you are honest with yourself, often cause you feelings of envy, anxiety, anger, or self-criticism. Mute or unfollow them. You do not owe your attention to anyone. You are reclaiming your peace of mind. Third, go to your phone settings and turn off all non-essential notifications. Leave only calls and messages from real people. Free yourself from the tyranny of the constant buzzing. You have completed the practice. You have performed 3 conscious and powerful acts to harmonize your environment. This is not a one-time task. It is a continuous practice, a lifestyle. Being the conscious curator of your environment is not another obligation on your to-do list. It is one of the deepest acts of self-love you can perform. Because by polishing the mirror of your external world, you are creating a clear and beautiful reflection in which your true self can finally recognize and flourish. Chapter 10. The Uniqueness of the Delta, Integration and Full Expression. We have traveled together along a river. We began at its source, learning the radical act of acceptance, allowing the current of our life simply to be. We have tuned our ear in the silence of the mountains to hear the echo of our own inner truth. We have felt the friction of life polishing our sharpest stones, transforming our challenges into resilience. We have learned the wisdom of the backwaters of peace, recognizing rest not as an absence, but as a source of power. We have walked the banks whispering the murmur of gratitude, shifting our focus from lack to abundance. We felt the energy accumulate until it was released in a waterfall of purpose and inspired action. We have danced with other pebbles in the current, understanding relationships as a flow of co-creation. We have built bridges of trust over the waters of uncertainty, learning to let go of control. And we have recognized our environment as a mirror of our inner world. Now, our river approaches its final stretch. And in the cosmology of our culture, the end of a great journey is often imagined in a very specific way, the arrival at the top of a mountain. We are taught to view life as a climb. The journey is an uphill struggle, a constant effort to reach a single summit, a lone peak that represents our true purpose or ultimate success. This metaphor, though inspiring in its simplicity, has done us a disservice. It has instilled in us a deep anxiety about finding that one thing, that singular calling we are supposed to follow. It makes us feel like a failure if our interests are diverse, if our career path meanders instead of ascending in a straight line, or if, upon reaching one summit, instead of eternal fulfillment, we only find a cold wind and the sight of other, perhaps higher, mountains we should be climbing. This mountain model forces us to fragment. To climb efficiently, we must lighten the load. We leave behind parts of ourselves that don't seem useful for the ascent. We suppress our playful side to be more professional. We hide our sensitivity to appear stronger. We abandon hobbies and passions that don't contribute directly to the goal. We become climbing specialists, but forget how to live in the vast, rich landscape of the valley. Today, I invite you to abandon the metaphor of the mountain and embrace the metaphor of the delta. The river, at the culmination of its long journey, does not crash into the sea in an abrupt ending. It does something far more extraordinary and generous. It expands. The single channel branches out into an intricate, beautiful network of hundreds, sometimes thousands of smaller streams and currents. This is the delta. It is not an ending. It is an apotheosis. It is the moment when the river, before merging with the vast ocean, expresses itself in its maximal diversity and abundance, sharing everything it has gathered on its journey with the land around it. And in this image resides the key to a life of integration and wholeness. The first truth of the delta is that the river carries everything with it. The water flowing through that labyrinth of streams is the same water that sprang from the high mountain source. It carries in its molecular composition the memory of every stage of its journey. It carries the minerals from the rocks it has polished, the pollen from the riverside flowers, the fertile silt from the tranquil valleys. It discards nothing. In the same way, your integrated self, your delta being, does not need to repudiate any part of your past. Every experience, every relationship, every job, every joy and every wound is part of the water that makes you up. The job you had for 10 years that no longer aligns with you was not a mistake. It was a tributary that taught you skills and gave you lessons. The relationship that ended in pain was not a failure. It was a powerful current that polished some of your sharpest stones. Your curiosity for ancient history, your cooking skill, your love for animals, none of it is trivial. They are the nutrients and minerals that make your river water unique. Integration is the act of stopping the judgment of the stages of your journey and starting to see them all as essential contributions to the richness of who you are today. The second truth of the delta is the celebration of multifaceted expression. Unlike the mountain with its single peak, the delta has countless paths to the sea. This frees us from the tyranny of having to be one single thing. In your personal delta, you can be many things simultaneously, and all of them are authentic expressions of your being. You can be a meticulous accountant by day and a passionate watercolor painter by night. You can be a devoted parent, a community activist, an avid hiker, and an amateur philosopher. One of these streams may be wider and carry more volume, perhaps your main career, but the smaller streams are no less important. Often they are the ones carrying the most unique nutrients. Society may pressure you to choose one label, one channel, but the soul yearns to express itself in its totality. Living from the delta is giving yourself permission to honor all the channels through which your vital energy wants to flow. It is understanding that your purpose is not a single label, but the sum total of all your authentic expressions. This leads us to the third and perhaps most beautiful truth of the delta: purpose as a natural overflow. A delta is one of the most fertile and biologically rich areas on Earth. Its labyrinth of streams deposits the rich sediments accumulated over a long journey, creating incredibly nutritious soil where life flourishes explosively. This is the healthiest model of service and purpose. We often conceive of purpose as an arduous task, a duty, something we do out of a sense of obligation to help the world. But from the delta's perspective, service is not effort, it is overflow. When you have lived a process of integration, when you have accumulated the richness of your experiences and allow yourself to express authentically through your multiple channels, your life naturally and inevitably begins to nurture the land around you. Your purpose is not something you have to go out and find. It is the side effect of being fully yourself. The gift you have for the world is your unique combination of nutrients, your hard-won wisdom, your polished skills, your empathy forged in pain, your passions and your joys. Simply by flowing through your authentic channels, you are depositing this richness around you. The entrepreneur who creates a business from their passion for human connection is nourishing their employees and customers. The parent who shares their love for nature with their child is nourishing the next generation. The friend who listens with total presence from the depth of their own self-acceptance is nourishing another's soul. Purpose ceases to be a grandiose destination and becomes the sacred act of every moment, allowing the richness of your inner river to overflow and give life to what it touches. Finally, every stream in the delta, after its final dance of expression and generosity, reaches the same place: the ocean. This is the final truth of the journey, that of transcendence. The ocean represents universal consciousness, the source, from which everything emanates and to which everything returns. The arrival at the ocean is the moment of the ego's dissolution, the end of the illusion, that we were ever a separate entity. It is the deep understanding that our unique little river, with its particular journey and its highly personal history, was nothing more than a way for the great ocean to be experiencing itself. This recognition does not diminish the importance of our individual journey. On the contrary, it confers sacred meaning upon it. Every twist, every struggle, every joy was not just ours. It was the experience of the whole through our unique perspective. Living from this ocean consciousness brings us immense peace. It dissolves the fear of death, the anxiety about legacy, and the need to prove our worth. We realize that we cannot make a mistake, because every meander of the river is ultimately the way home. The river's ultimate goal is not to reach the sea, but to remember that it was always a part of it. We have traveled together through ideas and concepts. Now, in this last stretch of our journey, I invite you to a final practice. It is not about learning anything new, but about remembering everything. A meditation to feel the uniqueness of your own delta and your connection to the ocean. The river practice. Embodying the delta, find your position of stillness. Close your eyes and allow your body to settle, releasing any tension with a few deep breaths. I invite you on a quick journey through the course of your own river. Visualize at the top of a misty mountain the birth of your consciousness, the first moment of acceptance, the yes to life. Feel that small current begin to flow. Feel how, as it descends, you hear the echo of your own inner truth, distinguishing it from other voices. Watch as your river encounters large, sharp rocks, the challenges of your life. Feel the friction, the constant work of the current polishing those edges, and recognize the resilience you have forged. Feel how your river reaches wide, quiet valleys where the current slows and backwaters of peace form. Rest there for a moment, sensing the wisdom of conscious repose. As you flow, feel a murmur of gratitude arise from the riverbed, an appreciation for every drop of water, every ray of sun, every bend in the road. Feel the energy accumulating, growing in volume and power, until it reaches the edge of a precipice and is released in a magnificent waterfall of inspired action, your purpose expressing itself with natural, effortless force. Observe how other rivers and streams join yours, how you dance with the pebbles of other lives, in a flow of co-creation. Feel the deep trust you have cultivated, allowing you to build a flexible bridge over the waters of uncertainty, letting go of control. And notice how the surface of your river clearly reflects the beauty and harmony of the environment you have consciously chosen for yourself. You have completed the entire journey. And now feel the land flatten, the current slows, and your river, which was once a single channel, begins to divide. Feel the liberation of this expansion. One arm of your river flows to the right, representing your work in the world. Another flows to the left, embodying your role in your family or with your friends. A smaller stream meanders through a field of flowers, representing a creative passion. Another nourishes a dense forest, symbolizing your wisdom and inner world. Do not try to count them. Simply feel the joy of this multiple expression. Recognize and honor each of these channels. They are all you. They are all valid. They all carry the essence of your journey. Feel how the land around your delta turns green and fertile, how life flourishes thanks to the unique richness you deposit in the world. Feel the joy of service that is not a duty, but a natural overflow of your fully integrated self. Finally, lift your inner gaze and see on the horizon an infinite line of brilliant light. Dead is the ocean. Feel the soft, powerful pull. One by one or all at once, feel the streams of your delta meet the water of the great sea. Experience this moment of union. Feel how the distinction between your drop of water and the ocean dissolves. The history, the struggles, the achievements of your individual river are not erased, but are surrendered to the whole, adding your unique note to the infinite symphony of existence. There is no longer a separate I navigating a river. There is only the flow. There is only the being. Rest in this sensation of unity, of having arrived home. Rest in the peace that comes from knowing that your journey, with every one of its perfect and imperfect details, has been complete. Take one last deep breath, inhaling the vastness of the ocean. As you exhale, bring that feeling of totality and peace back to the center of your heart. When you are ready, slowly open your eyes. The river journey has culminated, but the dance of the ocean is just beginning. Conclusion. And so our journey along the inner river reaches its delta, and its waters merge with the vast ocean. We have arrived at the end of this tour together, but at the true beginning of your new way of navigating life. The purpose of this audiobook was never to give you a map so you could control the river, but to help you remember that you are the river. The struggle you felt wasn't against an external force, but against your own expansive and fluid nature. You've transitioned from being the anxious architect, trying to build dams against the current, to becoming the conscious dancer, moving with grace to the rhythm of the water. The teachings shared in these chapters aren't concepts to be memorized, but truths to be embodied. They are reminders of a wisdom that already resides deep within your being. From this moment on, radical acceptance is no longer a technique you practice. It's the air you breathe, the unconditional yes to the present moment. Resilience is no longer armor you put on for battle. It's the very texture of your soul, polished and smoothed by life's currents, with every challenge integrated as a mark of beauty and strength. Trust is no longer a blind leap into the void. It's the feeling of firm ground beneath your feet, the inner certainty that you have the resources to navigate any flow. Take a deep breath right now, a real breath. Feel the calm that underlies the noise of your thoughts. Sense that serene, powerful current in the center of your chest. That is your river. That is your truth. You've completed this journey, and now you stand on the shore of an ocean of possibilities, not with a set of rules, but with a finely tuned inner compass. You no longer have to force, to fight, or to prove. Your only task is to listen to your inner echo, honor your backwaters of peace, and allow the waterfall of your purpose to flow effortlessly. This audiobook, this particular river, has reached the sea, but the ocean of knowledge is infinite, and there are many more currents to explore. If this journey has resonated with you, and you wish for this stream of wisdom to reach more people, I invite you to join our community in a very simple way. Subscribe to our channel to keep nourishing yourself with future explorations. Share it with someone you believe needs to navigate their own waters with more confidence. And if this message has brought you value, please like it to help this river reach distant shores. Let's keep creating this ocean of discovery together. Thank you for walking this path, for your bravery to let go of the bank and trust the current. May the peace of your inner river guide you always, and may your dance with life be one of grace, purpose, and unbreakable confidence. Thank you for listening.